Hi, this is Travis with the Meat Block Podcast. This is episode 1.5. This is just going to be a mini episode or a half episode. We will do these from time to time. This is going to allow us to answer your questions and do any corrections and things like that. So this is just going to be a Q&A, and I'll be back at the end with some liner notes. Yeah, so sit back, relax, and David is going to answer some questions for you.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. In his way, the meat cutter is an artist. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
Hey, everybody. David here. We're going to be tackling some of the questions that you guys have been sending Travis and I for the last couple weeks. Please keep sending them, because every other week we're going to have one of these Q&A sessions, and it'll give us lots of stuff to wrap our heads around and look up. So we're going to start with our friend from Instagram, @PolishedGun in Belfast, Ireland. His first question is, would you ever work in retail again? Man, that's a great question. I've worked in a couple aspects of retail, as I mentioned in the last episode. I don't think I'd ever want to work in a giant grocery store doing 100 to 120,000 a week. You know, you've got, 90 to 100 feet of case space. You've got, 6 to 10 guys on the floor at any given time. I don't know if I want to do that. I think you're pushing product to the point where it feels a little sterile. It feels a little impersonal. I think it's kind of difficult to, don't get me wrong. You could still establish a great rapport with some customers, but I think maybe at that point I felt that like I spent the majority of my time filling cases from back stock. If you're the cutter in those situations, it's great because you learn, you get a lot of work on your speed there. You get to know a lot of primals and subprimals inside and out, different ways to merchandise certain things, but I prefer a whole beast situation, to be honest with you. I think that I would consider doing a small shop again. When I was in Seattle working for a small shop in Capitol Hill, I really loved it. We were doing beef, pork, lamb, whole carcasses. We had a charcuterie program. We had a ready-to-eat program. We had the kind of oven-ready, take-home dinner stuff. Occasionally, we were working on that. We were able to market butcher classes, demos, dinners, things like that. I think you get a much wider berth of options as far as ways to make ends meet. One thing I really loved was on Sunday night, we'd have the cuts that were kind of oxidized, weren't case ready still. And we'd be able to, one thing I really loved was taking those cuts, taking the bone broth we had made the night before, doing a great braise, taking that meat the next day and turning that into a ragu or a sugo, and then having a pasta sauce to sell by the pint. Then we'd make a small batch of pasta, happen very quickly. And the markup, the food cost is very low on a product like pasta. So we were able to take, say, an 8-ounce portion of fresh pasta, package it up really cute in butcher paper and twine, sell it with that pint of ragu, change every week. We had all our sausage spices, so we had plenty of things on hand. And we were able to make a great margin off of things that were on their way out anyways. And I think that creativity, for getting that added value out of the product is something, it's a situation I really thrive in. That's one of my very favorite things about butchery is figuring out how to use the entire animal snout to tail and making that money work for you. I think what's most likely for me, however, is the farm where I live and work. We're going to be raising animals. We're going to be slaughtering them, processing them here on the farm, and then having a retail exempt shop here. So not only will I be able to sell whole carcasses and cuts to customers of my CSA, but I'll also be able to have a small retail exempt shop on the premises where people come to me and I'm able to talk to them about specifically what it is that they're getting, or perhaps even take custom orders for what people would like. And I think that that's, to me, I mean, that's how I want to buy meat. That's how I want to sell meat directly to the consumer, right from the shop. And I think that's really how I can ensure the highest quality product for the people that are coming around. And I think there's a lot of options as far as the product that you can put out. Sky's the limit, really. I think that's my thoughts on retail. I don't know. I certainly wouldn't go back to one of the big box places. But only because that wasn't where I thrived. I think that takes a special skill set, and hats off to everybody who can go through a pallet of New York roasts in 3 hours. The next question comes from DanceDance987 on Instagram about how to get started. It says, what advice would you give on how to get started in the industry? I've applied to every butcher and grocery store in all of Fargo and the surrounding areas fruitlessly. I can read the NAMP guide in my spare time all I want, but how can I actually get a foot in the door? Well, that's a great question. The Midwest, I think, has potentially more options. I don't know about Fargo. That's really up there, but it depends on if you want to move or not. If you want to move down to Chicago, there's endless opportunities for meat cutters there. You've got processing plants right in the city. You've got a lot of whole animal restaurants. You've got a lot of retail, and inevitably one of those places is going to be looking for an apprentice. If you would like to stay up in Fargo, my suggestion is, regardless of what I said at the last question, to get into retail, I think. While I said I would never want to go back to one of those big box stores, the experience that I gained in that place was so essential. Learning about prep lists, learning about cut orders, about production loads for the day, about inventory, about the various cuts themselves, learning from old timers that are inevitably there. I would definitely recommend getting into retail if you can. If you can't, maybe look around. I don't know. I'd probably look around custom exempt slaughterhouses. There's always a lowest rung on the ladder in those spots. And whether it's on the kill floor or in their cut room, I think that you'd are very likely to find something. And that's really my advice for everybody. Marcus from Seattle also asked, hi there, I'd like your help. I live in Seattle and work in a kitchen. I'd like to learn about the butcher art, but can't find any course. Same deal. Seattle for me, it was just a matter of finding someone who needed help on the lowest rung of the ladder, and that was the way that I went. And then you can work your way up, and sometimes you work your way up in one company, and then you get to another place and you're back on the bottom. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I'd rather be on the bottom of a ladder with a quiet skill set that I've been working on and surprise people than tell people that I'm a master butcher and don't really have a great grasp on it and under-deliver. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver anytime. So my suggestion is to get into retail, learn the basic ropes there, and then move on. I suggest to anyone that's in the meat industry to get into slaughter. I think that oftentimes in the retail environments, when you're mostly dealing with primals and subprimals, and that's your only experience, you might not be able to put the whole animal together with all your parts. And I really believe that slaughter allows you to kind of put the big picture together and makes you a better butcher. No doubt about that. Next question is from Polished Gun again. He's got some really great questions, and I'm just going to give some time to a few of them. From a recent post that I put up on my Instagram, I was kind of talking about, I've got this guy that I work with, and he does things in a very old school way. His methods of breakdown, I think, are more centered in post-World War I, Middle America. I think his skill set was handed down from some people who learned in the 40s. and maybe hasn't really updated a lot because I'm in such a rural area. There hasn't, traditions stick around a lot longer in these types of places. And I had a post where I posted something and said, this guy that I work with, he calls this a such and such steak. And he won't listen to me, no matter what I say. What do you guys do? And it kind of just illustrated this disconnect between maybe the younger guys and the older guys. And I know everybody has experienced this in their shops. And at Polished Gun wants to know, do you feel the old school way is fading out and that we're progressing to a better system to better utilize certain cuts? I don't know if we're better utilizing cuts necessarily. I think it's all in the context of history. I think about when my great-grandfather and my great-uncle were butchers. They were farm butchers on their farm, and they serviced all of the farmers in the area. And, when you're butchering a quarter of beef or a half a beef for a family, it can be more about utility than about creativity or anything else. The cut sheet, the place where I currently work, the chuck can be broken down into chuck roasts, and then that's it. That's all you get off the chuck, roasts. And then you can get short ribs, you can get a brisket, you can get rib steaks, you can get New Yorks, you can get sirloin, you can get round steaks or round roasts, and that's it. For me, I think you can get way better bang for your buck out of a carcass, but I think that eating has really changed in the last 60 to 70 years, honestly. And it's even changed in the last 20 years. I think that people are eating less meat more often, or less meat more creatively. Instead of throwing an entire chuck in the crock pot, maybe people want to take that and break it up into Delmonico's and chuck eyes and Denver's and flat irons and Vegas strips and boneless short ribs, whatever you want to do there. I think there's more options. There's more excitement. I think that the way that people look at meat now is they want, it almost feels like it stimulates the collector in me. I'd rather have my carcass broken down into 30 different steaks and a couple roasts, just because it gives me some different things to do. I'm going to cook a Denver differently than I'm going to cook a flat iron, and I'm going to cook a chuck eye at a different time than maybe I would want a boneless short rib. It gives you more options and more creativity in the kitchen. But when I was a kid, we either had pot roast or we had steak, and that was it. And so I do think that we're moving away from that more rustic style of cut sheet. I think the food culture, the domestic and international farm to table, snout to tail movement has created a general interest in the consumer community to see different things. If you walk into a small shop, instead of calling something a boneless ribeye, you're calling it a Spencer steak or perhaps a entrecôte. It's going to pique people's interest, and they want to know what those are. And I think that because the at-home chef has gotten much more capable, because you have places like Bateau in Seattle where they're breaking down an entire carcass and utilizing all of the craft cuts. I think that interest has been generated, but I certainly don't discount the old school way, because there is something to efficiency and speed of production and just the utility that a family recognizes they need from breaking a carcass the old school way. So while I do think that the industry is moving along towards more craft butchery, interest in obscure steaks with new names all the time, certainly don't discount the old school type, because there's a reason why we broke animals that way. And I think efficiency, speed, and utility are the reasons. Kind of related. How is the agricultural side of things in the U.S.? I think it's kind of a really big answer for What seems like a simple question. Of course, large scale farming always going to be there. Farmers that just raise livestock in order to drop it off at the stockyards, and they're just numbers, and they get processed. That's always going to exist. Slaughterhouses that